We don't know what's out there. People might give you an answer, but they will probably be wrong.
Here is the problem. Right there, when r is equal to 0, the point at which physics itself breaks down. So 1 over r equals 1 over 0 equals infinity. To a mathematician, infinity is simply a number without limit. To a physicist, it's a monstrosity. It means that, first of all, gravity is infinite at the center of a black hole, that time stops, and what does that mean? Space makes no sense. It means the collapse of everything we know about the physical universe. In the real world, there's no such thing as infinity. I get yet another integral, and when you do this integral, you get something which makes no sense whatsoever. An infinity. Total nonsense. In fact, you get an infinite sequence of infinities, infinitely worse than the divergences of Einstein's original theory. This is a nightmare beyond comprehension.
The equations no longer make any sense. And nobody knows exactly what we're supposed to do about that.
Well, it's awful. It means that physics is having a nervous breakdown. It means the collapse of physics as we know it. You know, something is fundamentally wrong. Nature is smarter than we are.
We don't understand.
For nearly 100 years, physics has been able to explain the universe around us. General Relativity perfectly describes the motions of stars and galaxies. And the world of atoms is beautifully explained by quantum mechanics. Yet the discovery of black holes means we don't fully understand anything.
Since ancient times, we've looked into the night skies and wondered, how far do the stars stretch out into space? And what's beyond them? Many now conclude that what we can see, the stars and galaxies that stretch out to the limits of our vision, represent only a small fraction of all there is. Does the universe go on forever? Where do we fit within it? And to equal the number of grains of sand on all the world's beaches, that's around a sextillion, a 10 followed by 22 zeros. That's roughly the number of stars in the visible universe. Atoms in the visible universe? That's upwards of 10 to the 78th power, a 10 with 78 zeros. Largest named number in regular decimal notation. The Buddhist time period, Asamkhya, is 10 to the 140th years, or 100 quinto-quadragentillions. But it's still nowhere close to the ultimate ceiling. Infinity. For those who find infinity hard to grasp, even troubling, you're not alone. It's a concept that has long tormented even the best minds. To the philosopher Aristotle, a century after Zeno, infinity evoked the formless chaos from which the world was thought to have emerged, a primordial state with no natural laws or limits, devoid of all form and content. Aristotle reserved the status of actually infinite for the so-called prime mover that created the world and is beyond our capacity to understand. This became the basis for what's called the cosmological or first cause universe to burst forth. If this theory is right, then our universe is incomprehensibly large. Its author, the scientist Alan Guth, wrote that the universe as a whole would have grown to at least 10 billion trillion times the size of our visible patch. That's a 10 followed by 23 zeros. If you think that's big, a variation on the theory describes the origin of our universe as a physical process that exists far beyond it, out into the seemingly infinite void that had confounded Aristotle and other Greek thinkers. In that case, our universe would have inflated like a bubble and joined a stream of other bubble universes frothing up and expanding across an endless ocean of time and space. A related idea theorizes a cosmic landscape unfolding in vast fractal patterns. These new, more expansive visions of the cosmos are not without their paradoxes. Logically speaking, with infinite stars, infinite planets, infinite universes, you will also have infinite possibilities. Cosmology, the study of the universe as a whole, has long been infused with metaphysics and philosophy.
I think infinity has been with the species implicitly even from the beginning. Ever since we realized that we die, that we have finite lives, finite extent in time, we've longed to extend that. We've longed to touch something that's eternal, touch something that's infinitely long in duration. And I think that's with all of us. And I think all of us have that urge to know about, to touch, to engage with something that goes beyond the short little finite lifespan that we're each given.
Infinity is intermixed with limitation, where there is a scope of what we can know and calculate and think and do, and there is something outside of that that we have not been able to tackle yet. But those boundaries are breakable. So I think we can ultimately get there, but I don't think we can actually truly appreciate what that is or means.
What does it mean for something to be infinite? Is it a meaningful question to ask? I'm not sure the human mind can comprehend many aspects of nature. We have an intuition, but at some point we're guided by the mathematics, and one of the triumphs of the human brain is that we've been able to write down a description of nature that takes us beyond what we can comprehend.
I think infinity is comprehensible. We can use equations to describe things that we can't actually touch with our hands or see with our eyes. And as long as you allow mathematics into your language, into your discourse, into your lexicon, then yes, you can talk about infinity.
Can humans ever understand infinity? I guess that depends on what you mean by understand. I don't think that we're capable of imagining what infinity is, because if you think about it, most of the things in our life are finite, including our lifespans. We can certainly get very close to it through mathematics. Mathematics is the key to understanding the universe without actually having to see things.
I think I like that there's no answer to it. I think I like that it drives me to keep looking for an answer. One of the really beautiful things about infinity for me is that it crosses culture, it crosses religion, it crosses all of humanity. It's a really unifying idea.
our Hindu faith looks at the three events that every element in this universe takes place. The earth, the sun, the moon, all the planets and all the heavenly bodies, right down to the smallest atom, is created, and then it exists, and then it dies. The soul has an eternal journey until it comes to a place where it does not go anymore. Whether it has reached heaven, or in our case, Vaikuntha, or infinity.
So in physics, infinity crops up in a number of ways. Perhaps the most straightforward one is to imagine how big is space? How far does space go on? If you were to go into a spaceship and go out into the universe, could you keep on going forever? Infinitely far would be that notion of space. Or is space finite? This is a question that we don't know the answer to yet, but it's one version of how infinity comes into our description of the universe.
So the furthest thing that humans can see is what's called the cosmic microwave background. This is the relic energy. You're always looking into the past because of how long it takes that light to get to us. Because the universe is now growing faster over time than light can catch up, there's a physical limit to what we can see. We will never be able to see the edge because everywhere we look is infinite.
We are limited in what we can see out in the universe to something called the observable universe. And that's the part of the universe where there's enough time for light emitted by any object out there to have traveled through space and to reach our eyes. Now, we believe that observable universe is just a small chunk of a much larger realm, which would be the entire universe. Can we learn about the entire universe even though we might never be able to see it? And the answer to that, I think, is yes. When we write down the laws of physics, we're guided by our observations of the things that we can see, but we believe that the laws apply much beyond, that they are universal laws that may apply absolutely everywhere. So using the mathematics, we gain a new way of seeing. The math allows us to understand what happens outside of the realms that we can actually have direct access to.
There isn't actually a biggest counting number because, of course, whatever number you can think of, there's always a number bigger than that. Now let's start with a googol. A googol is one with 100 zeros after it. A googolplex is 10 to a googol. If you think about it, googolplex factorial, so 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 all the way up to a googolplex, is much bigger than a googolplex. So whatever number you can think of, there's always a number bigger than that. So it's often talked about in maths that there are different kinds of infinity. Even mathematics has its limits.
What is the smallest thing you can see? Smallest object would really be the scale of an atom, although you would use a microscope of a very special kind. It's a hard question to answer because you have to think about, well, what does it mean to see?
in mathematical equations, we say this equation is asymptotically approaching infinity. So where it approaches infinity, how long it takes is conjecture. Very often we limit it, we put a frame picture, and what exists within that frame is what we realize, and what goes outside the frame we are not aware of.
I believe our observations of the universe are infinite, and it tells us it's infinite.
Certainly infinity is in our face every day trying to do physics, particularly quantum mechanics. To some extent that's not a physics question. We sort of branch into metaphysics there and philosophy when we try and really interpret what infinity is and what it means.
You think about it and you have these moments of clarity where you see it and you just go, oh, I get it, and then in a blink of an eye it's just gone.
We can think about it, but we cannot define it. It is indefinable. The concept of infinity is not that easy in a philosophical sense, just as it is in mathematical sense or in the scientific sense.
It tells us we can't do something. It tells us we can't know something. It tells us that we are limited. And ultimately, I do not believe that, because in science, we say that we can figure things out through experimentation, through theory, through thinking, through the greatness of what makes humanity humanity. Infinity says the exact opposite of that.
Mathematics is built on precise definitions and rigorous logic. So in a way, my role as a mathematician isn't to believe anything, it's to prove things.
Belief is a curious word in science. I like to say, what confidence do I have in this or that? And my confidence is always based upon the data. And right now we don't have any data to distinguish between a finite universe and an infinite universe, so there's really no basis for judgment.
The question of linking infinity to heaven or Vaikuntha or any other name that you may want to choose as being the ultimate destination is probably a mystery.
Yeah, I don't know if we ever grasp it. I think we get flashes of it.